In our last lesson, we talked about the different types of data in R and how to set a variable. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to combine individual data points into vectors. So, as is written on your screen, a vector is a sequence of numbers or text strings or true or false statements. It can be anything, but the key point is that vector can only contain one type of data. So, I've got some example vectors here. I've created one that's age, with a whole bunch of numbers in it, and I've created one of middle names, which are text strings. However, with vectors, but I couldn't go in and add, say, a number to this vector because it's a text string vector. So if we go ahead and run these, age, now see that it shows up in our environment, so that means it's saved into R. And if we select the whole thing here and run, now I've made this line multiple lines. It doesn't need to, it's just so that it can fit on my screen. When you do this, you have to make sure that your comma is on the first line and not here. So what I mean by that is you have to make sure that instead of pressing enter here and having it continue on to the next line with the comma here, you have to make sure that the comma is up here. Otherwise, as R is reading this line, it goes along and says, okay, we want middle name and we want to set these variables, and then it gets to the end of the line. If there's no comma there, it thinks that your line is incomplete. It doesn't understand what to do. It'll just stop and not run anymore. So you have to make sure the commas are at the ends of the lines that you want it to keep reading. And when you combine individual numbers or texts into a vector, the syntax is that you make up a name for your new vector. So this vector is called age. I'm naming it that. You put the arrow to say that everything on this side of the arrow is going to be saved into that name. And then you're going to write C, parentheses, and then all of your data. And the C stands for concatenate, and that just means you're taking all these individual numbers and putting them together so that they relate to each other. If you want to make a vector of a whole bunch of numbers, but you don't feel like typing in, for example, all these ages, let's say you just need numbers 1 through 100, but you don't want to type out all 100 numbers. What you can do is use this sequence function, seq, parentheses, and then say from whatever your starting number is to whatever your ending number is, and then you can also do it by a certain degree. So this is from 4 to 100 by 15, but you could also do a sequence from equals 1 to maybe 10 by 1. And then that would just give you the numbers 1 through 10 by 1. And you can see that in the console down there. A shorthand of this, because this is really easy to read, it's pretty obvious what this code will do. But a shorthand is just to put the numbers. Sequence, the first number is the start, the second number is the stop, and the last number is the interval. In the next line, I've taken a sequence from 1 to 13, stepping by ones, and I've saved it into a variable. So if I run that, then you can see that that has appeared in my values box up here, and I can use that later on. Some things you can do with vectors. So this is really nice if you have to do a calculation on a huge vector of numbers. So if I wanted to get mean of the above vector age, all I'd have to do is, instead of adding all of these up and dividing by however many there are, all I have to do is say mean age, and it prints out the mean. Another one is median, and then SD stands for standard deviation. And then here, I can't just take the square root of the entire thing because it's a bunch of different numbers. But what I can do is I can say, I want to take the square root of age at position 1. So position 1 is just the first number. If I'd said 2, it would be position 2, position 3, position 4. I could pick any of them. But that's 16, so square root should be 4. And if I run it, you can see I got 4. So in this lesson, I introduced you to vectors and how to make them and what they're composed of. And in the next lesson, we're going to go even a little further with them and learn how to manipulate them a little more.